We're going to open our meeting. The 14th meeting of the Commission for Father, Men, and Boys is now in session. My name is George Garrow. I'm chair of the commission. I want to thank you all for coming tonight. We've had a couple of speakers tonight, and I think it should be interesting and informative. I have Tony Duggar, our executive director, provide a purpose and the mission of the commission.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Commission on Father, Men, and Boys was established in 2013 by the City Council, and the commission is tasked with addressing disparities in education, economic opportunities, the rate of fatherlessness in homes, health and well-being, reintegration, rehabilitation of trained citizens, specifically just for Columbia males of color.
Thank you, thank you. I think initially we'll move directly to have a couple of our speakers speak before approving the minutes and a few other chores that we perfunctorily have to accomplish. We're fortunate to have Dr. Kim Jeffries-Leonard,
Yes.
Chair of the Commission of African American Affairs.
Yes.
We're going to have her address the commission.
Thank you so much, Chairman. I am
Thank
Dr. Kimberly Jeffries-Leonard, the Chair on the Commission of African American Affairs. We have our Elise Nelson here with us, who is our staff member in the office, program manager.
That's what I was told, anyway.
Program manager, thank you. In the Office on African American Affairs, and the director will be here soon, Rotwin Branch. But I represent the commission whose charge is to address the issues of African Americans in the District of Columbia, specifically as it relates to education, health, and economic outcomes. This commission was established in 2014, and we have partnered with various commissions within the district, in addition to agencies, to really look at and address those issues that affect African Americans in the District of Columbia. We're very pleased to be here because we know that the work that you're doing on the Commission on Fathers, Men, and Boys is really consistent in terms of the fact that we know that boys, men of color are really impacted by those issues that we're looking at when we talk about education, health, and economic issues within the District of Columbia. So thank you for allowing us to come and join you tonight.
Thank you, thank you. Also, we're going to call on Ms. Nelson, the program manager, who's the, I understand, assistant executive director.
She's the deputy executive director.
I just want to echo what Dr. said. We're so happy to be here. Our work intersects. Our office is always focused on African Americans in the city, looking at equity, looking specifically at how we can make sure that agencies are delivering equitable services across the city. And so we look forward to working with you more.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you very much, sir. Also, I think we'll have a roll call of our commissioners from left to right.
Nelson Scott.
Franklin Malone.
Ingrid Peter.
Arthur Burnett, Secretary.
George Carroll, Chair.
Silas Grant.
Don Smith.
You have in your package minutes from the last meeting. Did you peruse that briefly and have a motion to support, accept the minutes as prepared?
As Secretary, I move that you received at this point.
Do we have a second, please?
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? Minutes are accepted. Our principal presenter tonight, UDC President Ronald Mason. I'll pass it to Mr. Duggar to introduce him.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tonight, we're fortunate to have a presentation by the University of the District of Columbia. The University of the District of Columbia is President Mason to share with us the equity imperative. And needless to say, when we look at the mission of both commissions, Office of African American Affairs and Commission on Father, Men, and Boys, we certainly know and identify UDC with what it's doing to certainly set up our young people for that promising future. So with that, I am going to give you President of the University of District of Columbia, President Mason.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity to share this presentation with you. Let me give you a little background on it. A few months ago, there was a conversation with Megan, and I told her that I knew that universities didn't have natural constituencies. The public schools can rally a lot of noise when they need to get things done for their agenda. The universities don't have those same kind of constituencies. So I told her I was going to go out and build a constituency for UDC so that when budget time came around, I would be able to help her put more money into UDC's budget. And so this presentation really served a dual purpose. First, it was part of us building a constituency for the district, for UDC. So we've shown this all over the district. I think we saw it, we were in Ward 8 when we showed it there. But we've been to ANCs and we've had them on campus here. But the other thing we did with this was that we're also putting together our strategic plan for the next 4 years. So we use this presentation to also gather information from the public so that we can use that in the development of our strategic plan, which we're going to call the Equity and Charity. And we picked up, as you can see on the mayor's, one of our main themes, which is putting more people on the pathway to the middle class. The point of this presentation is that that pathway is incomplete in the district because of the lack of investment in the public education component, public higher education component of the pathway. So if you give me about 12, 15 minutes, I can walk you through it.
Fantastic.
Okay, that's not it. Here we go. And this is just to emphasize the point that one of the biggest priorities that putting people on the pathway to the middle class is education. That was her statement in her budget forward 2 years ago. And so what is the middle class in the district? Median household income is $75,506. In the United States, it's $59,000. But in the district, it's a good bit more. If you break it down by race, white median household income is $127,000. Asian is $99,000. Latinos is $64,900. With blacks in the district, median household income is $37,000. If you look at it in terms of salaries, the median salary in the district is $60,000. If you have a high school degree, though, the median salary is only $30,000. If you have a bachelor's degree, it'll get you over the top of the median salary. But look at the distribution of college credentials. Only 25% of African Americans in the district have college credentials. 41% of Latinos and 92% of white DC residents hold college degrees. So the level of educational attainment makes a difference. And education really is, generally speaking, the pathway to the middle class. You can't get there without a bachelor's degree. And so where are the people that need that pathway? They're in our public school system, 70% of which is African American, 17% Latino, and 79% economically disadvantaged. That's at the P12 level in the public and public charter schools. But at the higher education level, this is actually 70% of the degree-seeking students at UDC are from DC public and public charter schools. So they come straight to us. And in the workforce development program that we have, which is free to all DC residents, that's 100% DC residents. And so we're 60% African American, 10% Latino, and 40% economically disadvantaged. So the pathway for folks that look like this is incomplete. And the reason that it's incomplete is this. When the control board came in and reset the district's future by cutting its budget and then reinvesting in its major institutions, they really cut, and this is from the words of the chairman of the control board, the cuts to UDC were really much too deep. And UDC has been digging out of that hole ever since. But if you think about it, they've reinvested in the parks, the recreation system, they've reinvested in the libraries, they've reinvested in the public and public schools, and all of those are, you know, becoming world-class institutions. But the hub of it all is your public education higher learning system, and that's the one thing that's still left to be brought back. And so, if you compare the investment in the district in higher education to other jurisdictions, the USA average is 5.8% of the budgets. Maryland puts 4.5% of its budget into higher education. Virginia 3.8%, and DC only puts 1.1% of its budget into public higher education. And even with that $78 million, which is 1.1%, UDC still has a $313 million economic impact. And we think that with the proper investment, we can significantly increase the number of people that we put on the pathway to the middle class. Let me point out one thing to you here. You can see that third section graduation rate, 17%. So UDC has become known as the dropout factory because of that number. But there's more to that number. We have 3 doors in, a workforce door, an open enrollment door, and a selective admissions door. The open enrollment door is what we call our community college. And anybody can come in there. And that is where we do our associate's degree training. Associate's degree graduation rate is 7%. Now, if it was really a separate community college, that wouldn't be great, but it wouldn't be a bad graduation rate. The selective admissions door, which is the bachelor's degree track, that has a 35% graduation rate. Not great, but not bad as far as the 4-year graduation rates go. But because the community college is not separately accredited, they combine the graduation rates, and that's how you end up with a 17% graduation rate. The other thing is that we get a lot of tag students that leave and come back as transfer students. None of them count toward the graduation rate. And also, the graduation rate is only counted on first-time, full-time freshmen. We have 1,200 freshmen coming in a year, but only about 500 of them are first-time, full-time. And so you look at those 500 and they see how many graduate 6 years later, and that's what your graduation rate is. So I wanted to make that explanation because people don't understand it. But if you look at it as a separate 4-year and a separate 2-year school, it ain't great, but it ain't bad. But in any event, we're putting systems in place to fix all of that over time, and I'll show you what that's going to do. And so for the last 2 years, we've been working. We have a really good board now, and they understand the board's role. We brought in new management, national class professionals across the board. We have highly qualified new faculty members, 63 and counting. Our challenge is not getting them here, our challenge is keeping them here because of the salaries that we pay. And then we've done other things like, for example, when they put together the community college, they actually set it up as a technical school. And so all of the associate's degrees are technical degrees that don't transfer into the bachelor's programs up here. So our own community college is our lowest transfer school compared to other community colleges in the area. So we've been fixing that issue. We put in a whole new staff performance system. We have really good financial analytics now where we know if depending on what money we have, we know what we can do. We're developing it as a strength-based campus. And you may have seen that in marketing around the district. And as a result, you're starting to see these kind of neat rankings pop up, which are good rankings for a school of our type. Middle states came in and we were supposed to go on probation, but we ended up with, I'm sorry, these are not the rankings. These are the accomplishments. So we got 10 commendations from middle states. We were on probation with the federal government with financial aid. We cleaned all of that up and got all our audits clean. Our audits are so clean, the federal government said they didn't even want to audit us this year, which is the first time I've ever seen that. They said they didn't want to do a 133 audit. Our first time, full-time retention rate has gone up by 51%, by 10%, but the number of first-time, full-time students has gone up by 51%. This is a neat program here. Every student coming out of DC public or public charter schools gets some level of scholarship. If they have a 3.7, or if they're a valedictorian or salutatorian, they get a full ride and they get housing. We thought initially we'd have about 6 or 7 takers on this. The first year we had 48. The second year we had 108. And this year we have 300 in the pool. So what that tells us is that people are starting to look at UDC as a first choice option, these higher end students. We settled our first union contract with the adjunct faculty. And we also started our first PhD program in engineering and computer science, which is going to be a good program. And these are the kind of rankings that we've seen pop up. And you know, rankings depends on who's doing the ranking. But the first group said this is actually a good one. We're number 99 in the country for upward mobility, which means when you compare the salaries of our graduates to the salaries of their parents, out of 2,600 schools in the country, we're 99 on the list in terms of the biggest difference in those salaries. Wallet Hub ranked us the #1 community college in the DMV, which was interesting since we're not really a community college. We're a branch campus that we call a community college. U.S. News and World were #6 in clinical law programs behind Yale, which is #5. Wall Street Journal said we're #10 HBCU. We know we're the least expensive. This group, schools.com, said we're #1 university in D.C. based on tuition, financial aid, degree options, and student success. We are unique in a lot of ways in that we are the only public university in and for the nation's capital. We're the only exclusively urban land-grant university, which means that we have these big land-grant schools around the country, like the University of Alabama, but they're mostly rural in their service areas. We have one service area, which is the District of Columbia. And we're the only school in the country that has one city as its service area. And so we touch lives about 30,000 times a year through our extension work. And then we have these stackable credentials. We're the only university I know that has workforce certification, open enrollment, and selective admissions all under one umbrella. And every one of those doors lead to the next door. But here's the other side of it. We still have, we're under-resourced as far as people are concerned, skills and numbers. We have a beautiful, LEED Platinum student center here, but everything behind it is the same old campus. And so all the pipes are 50 years old, all of the wires are 50 years old. It's hot in the summer and cold in the winter here in these buildings. Our classrooms, some of them still have chalkboard, and we don't have any housing, which is a real challenge from an educational point of view. But we think we have a way to get at it. The board has approved a new overarching strategy, which is, well, you can read it, but at the pinnacle of public education in the district, you know, it's our job to support the district in its continuing efforts to be a model, sustainable, resilient, and equitable community. And we have goals to match that. We want to establish UDC as a model for public education nationally, and demonstrating the value of a public university of our type in the nation's capital. And we're really interested in connecting the dots between us and the DC public schools. Because the line between 12 and 13 is really an artificial line that goes back to agricultural days. But we think that, from your point of view, in terms of the mission of many boys and African Americans, if we can establish a learning system that starts before that child is born and is seamless all the way up to a bachelor's degree, and that specifically is designed to work with the students that we work with, we think we can see success at a much higher level. And we're going to pursue that aggressively. Increase the number of UDC degrees and workforce credentials. And there's science out here now that enables us to use software and personnel to intervene as students walk that path toward a bachelor's degree. When we see them getting off that path, we jump in, we grab them, and say, let's get back on the path. And then we want to graduate transformative leaders. We're establishing a culture where we don't, how do we put it? We're not sages on the stage, we're guides on the side. And so we work with the student and we learn from them as much as they learn from us. We want to widen and deepen the learning experience. And we want to use our land-grant status to attach experiential opportunities to everything that we do in the classroom. And this is what we need to do it, and this was the ask for the mayor. We want to ratchet up the budget, our operating budget, from $78 million in appropriation from the district to over 4 years, about $125 million. And we know exactly what we want to use it for, and we listed it out here. And then the other issue was, well, let me just do this piece. And this is what we use it for, mostly to fix salary problems. For example, I have a business school faculty that is paid 40% less than market on average. My engineers are paid 30% less than market on average. And the mayor just settled a big contract with the public school teachers, and I'm negotiating my contract now with my faculty. The first thing they look at is what she did with the teachers. So that will help us solve some of those things. And then it'd be nice if we had a little pop for early retirement. We have some folks that have been there close to 50 years, and as one of my faculty members told me, it was time for him to retire because he was teaching a class of negotiable instruments. He was trying to teach the students how to negotiate a check, and none of the students in the class knew what a check was. And on the capital side, we really need about $750 million to redo the campus. We can break this down, but we can do about $200 million of it with P3 partnerships like housing and stuff like that. But some of it we just need the district to pay for, like pipes and wires and stuff, because there's nobody else who will give you money to do that. But at the end of the day, though, all we're talking about is going from 1.1% of the budget to 1.72% of the budget. In comparison to what all the other jurisdictions are doing, there's still a modest investment in public higher education. And here's another interesting point, though. If you look at what public education investment does to reduce state spending on corrections and welfare, you can see how good an investment it is. The more you spend on public education, the lower you have to spend on corrections and welfare. And so at the end of the day, with the proper investment in the university, we think DC could have a middle class that looks like this. Where every family of every color has a fair chance to enjoy stable finances, healthy families, educational equity, and live in solid communities. And what is the pathway to the middle class? Well, it's your university, the University of the District. Now, the good news is, the mayor had her state of the budget here, and at the end of toward the end of was anybody out there? Yeah, so you heard what she said, right? She quoted me and she said, let me just let you know, I've heard your president, and we do understand that public education doesn't stop at the 12th grade. We asked for, I think, $14 million bump in the budget on the operating side. So you get the 14, but she did recommend 10, which is progress. And she put $132 million on the capital side. So we can start to renovate some of the buildings. So all in all, we feel like the campaign for UDC, we give it a B+, but it worked. And now we're working with council to make sure that they
about to ask you.
Take that. We want to see them too. And we did gather good information about our strategic plan, so we're going to present a new strategic plan called the Equity Imperative to the board in June, and that will guide our work for the next 4 years. That is my presentation.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you have had discussions and negotiation with council?
Yeah, well, see, I meet with the chairman once a month anyway.
Okay.
And he's seen this, he knows about it, he's always been an advocate. And then after the mayor makes her budget recommendation, which he's done, I have meetings set up with each council person, just to make sure that, you know. And what I also did was, I gave this presentation to the mayor and the council have a breakfast once a month. And I did this at that breakfast. So I think we're going to be pretty good there. The only question is, I don't think we're going to get worse. I'm trying to see if there's a way we can get better by the time the budget process is over. Yes?
What percentage of students are just residents?
Or residents? Right. About 70%. Yeah, that's in the degree granting program. But if you look at the workforce program, that's 100%. Because you can't get into that unless you're a DC resident. So
Have you
we're
been-
all about DC. Yes?
Have you been in contact with David Grosso and the Education Committee? And so it's just, he's been very proactive as to the school system and very responsive. And I've done a lot of work with him in that area as to focus on UDC and its future needs.
Yes, so, yes, I've met with him. The thing is, see, my committee is a committee of the whole.
Yeah.
With the chairman as my chairman. David wants me to be in his committee. But I told him that.
He might be more proactive than Phil would be, though.
Yeah, but Phil got all the money. That's what I told him. I said, look, Phil got all the money.
I just spent 2 days in hearings for various committees yesterday and today.
But I have, I'm talking to Grasso about, what I'd like to do is to set up a pilot at Baloo, at elementary and middle school there in that community, and set up a P16 seamless public school, and I'm talking to him about that.
Great.
Yes, Elsie?
At Southern University, we created the 5 Different Centers for America. This was a program promoting black male achievement, trying to get more black males getting college degrees. And I know that we now have the Ron Brown School here in D.C. Have you spent any time talking with the principal over there about some kind of pipeline from that school or some kind of similar program that you had?
I talked to him. Yeah, I talked to him when he first got here. But I felt like he needed the space to lock down his own thing. So I haven't
He did.
back. He did, right? Yeah.
He's been before the commission.
But the piece that Elsie talked, we had a thing at Southern we called the 5 Fifths Agenda for America, Making America Whole by reclaiming and developing black male human capital. And I don't know if you know this, but we started a pilot at the Baton Rouge, the New Orleans campus, but now they've started a second one, through Shreveport. And so a lot of, we're going to draw on a lot of what we learned there as we put this together.
Mr. President, first of all, I'm a former educator here. I used to teach here.
Here?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
an alumni of Fireball. Firebird.
Firebird.
Firebird. But I'm coming on like a fireball. I got some ideas here.
Okay.
First thing I want to ask you about is associate's degree. A lot of work I'm doing in the community has shown that there are some IT businesses that are giving our young men the ability to make $100,000 to $200,000 with proper IT prepping and education.
Few of the commissioners would like to know that person's name.
His name is Melvin Thompson. And he was at my meeting last week, and it was packed wall to wall. But what I'm asking is there any idea about looking at IT in that framework? I know the 4-year degree, I represent the 17% also nationwide of men who have degrees, but economically, this might be a way to take a look at bringing a new look to the university.
Yes, so we talk about stackable credentials, right? And let me give you an example. We have a partnership with Cisco Systems. And you can come into the workforce program and get 1 level of certification. But that level will set you up to get an associate's degree, which is the next level, and then that'll set you up to get a bachelor's degree. And now you can even go all the way up to a PhD, right? And so our vision is to enable every student that walks into the door to reach their highest level of human potential. And so if the highest they can reach is that first level, it will get them there. But a lot of times they come into that first level and the light bulb goes off and they end up getting a bachelor's degree. And we've had that happen too. So the answer to your question is yes. You know, we want to enable anybody that comes in the door to be the best they can be by the time they're in, especially in the tech area.
You know, I actually believe, we actually had someone from the Workforce Development Community College speak to us. And I mean, it's clear to me that it would seem significantly underutilized, particularly given the fact that it's essentially free for DC. Yes. Yeah. Are there any efforts being made to do a greater job of publicizing that? I just don't think a lot of residents know. Yeah, that you've got this jewel there. I mean, that's the value of that is. I mean,
it is.
The numbers.
So a couple of things. One, let me just be clear. We fixed a lot of stuff, but there's still a lot of stuff left to fix.
I understand.
and you know, we just had a retreat with my leadership at a couple of levels. And what came out, the first time I've seen any retreat like that, the unanimous agreement about anything. What they unanimously agreed on. They said, Mr. President, don't take on all this stuff until we're operationally ready.
I understand.
Right, the technology. So I say that to say that's marketing is part of the operational readiness.
Okay.
But having said that, we've been working with the district to put together their the oil plan for the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you saw that the mayor just announced that with a preferred trainer in the Work Infrastructure Academy that she put together an award agency.
Okay.
We're eligible training provider now for
Awesome. Yeah.
OES.
Sure.
OES. So we're slowly but surely firming up our relationships with the district.
Great.
And you know, the district has 200 contractors that do workforce training.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's their intention to shift as much of that to us over time as they can.
Well, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, so we're on it. We just ain't dead.
Thank you so much, Mr. President, for your presentation. I think that you've done a tremendous job, and I see where you've come and I see where you're going. I actually have been in DC since '88, and I remember the control board and also remember the reputation of UDC when I got here to go and to do my graduate work at Howard University. Having said that, I was one of those students who went back to my home school at Fayetteville State University. Fayetteville State University, yes. And got my undergraduate degree from Fayetteville State. And typically, that is not the first school we think of when we live in these cities. And that's unfortunate because we miss what you call a jewel and the resources and advantages that are right in our backyards. What challenges are you facing? I know that you have the program where valedictorians, high-performing students are able to come for free. Many of our students are not high-performing students. Many of our students are performing well, but they're not valedictorians. What challenges are you facing, and what are you doing to encourage, especially our high school students of color, to look at UDC as that school that they need, whether it be the professional or the academic, because you need students to matriculate. You need students who are going to come in first time, because that's impacting your bottom line numbers in terms of your graduation rates. So what are the challenges, and what do you need to address that?
So what are the challenges? Well, the biggest challenge really was resources. You saw about the numbers, if you look at it on a per student basis, we spent about $25,000 per student. The national average is about $31,000. So that's the issue. And then the other thing is the biggest recruiters are your students. You know, the students come from these palatial high schools and then come to a classroom with blackboards and chalk. You know, they start texting back to the other students, man, look what I got to deal with here, right? So that's stuff we've been dealing with. But we're dealing with it. On the cost, To put it in perspective for you, you can basically go to community college for free because the annual tuition there for a resident is about $3,000 a year. Pell Grant is $5,600. So a lot of students actually make money going to community college. And then on the Uptown campus here, for a resident, tuition is about $7,000. And so, $5,600. The average debt for a student when they leave here is about $8,000, which compared to the national average, that's because we don't have housing.
I got a kid at NYU. I
So one of the
understand.
challenges is housing.
Yes.
Even the students that come to us from Ward 8, which frankly is one of the lowest in terms of students that come to UDC. I think that's the lowest because kids in Ward 8 don't much go to college, which is a challenge there, right? So we get a lot more 4 or 5. I'm trying to answer your question directly, but there's a lot of challenges. The biggest challenge, I guess, overall has been the reputation of UDC as the university for dumb children.
Right, you dumb, you come.
Right.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yes. And those are things that we need to change because as we see from the presentation that you showed, that is not the case. I mean, number 10 HBCU in the nation, in the country. To me, these are the things that a matriculating high school student needs to see. Not in 12th grade, when their options may be limited and they feel that this may be their last option, but early on so they can really understand what you offer, what UDC offers. And so there needs to be some level of marketing within our schools starting very early.
We're doing that. We're starting.
Okay.
But that's why we did DC Up, that scholarship program, which is for students 3.0 and above. But we did it because we wanted to get students to start seeing UDC as a first option. And when kids in the high school see those kids come here, they start to say, well, maybe it's not such a bad place. And it seems like it's working. So the DC Up students have about an 85% retention rate.
Right. Okay.
You see, and that'll flow its way through so that in 6 years, you're going to see that graduation rate with something like 45 or 50%.
That 300 that you were talking about?
Well, so we get to be a little more every year. So we get more first-time, full-time students every year. And if we had housing, we get a whole lot more.
I do think that housing, I know that's probably a tough sell maybe to the council, whatever, but I think that's important. I think students, when they think about college, they think about the experience of going away.
Yes.
And so when you're staying, if you're in town, you're not going away. But if you've got housing, you can
That's right.
sort of go away without going away.
Within 3 years,
Yeah.
that's
That's what
you're
you-
going to see student apartments.
Okay.
Student apartments on campus.
Fantastic.
With tennis courts on the roof.
Yeah. The other thing that I think, and I'm quite certain you're ahead of the game on this, is you really need some champions in the city. People who will be your, yeah. I mean, that's all part of changing that public perception. I forgot to mention, Chairman Malone, I was an adjunct professor in the 90s for maybe about 3 years or so, and enjoyed my experience, and enjoyed having the contact with the students that were here. So I really think that I agree with you. I mean, you've sold me, and I think you've sold most of us on the need to have a vibrant university in the city.
Yes.
One thing I did want to ask you as well, you talked about what types of things are you doing to sort of tie the community college piece and even the workforce development piece to
The Van Ness?
the Van Ness
Yeah,
campus?
well, it's one university.
Yes, I
Clear
understand.
about that.
Yeah. And I was speaking equally, I was speaking, you were talking about just kind of tying it together as one university, but also students coming from workforce development and seeing themselves that they can go, as well as the community.
If you go into workforce
So.
development, you get all the perks of a student. You get an ID card, you get access to athletic programs, a library.
Okay.
You have the same, you have one counseling system. And so our student support system attaches to a student when they walk in the door and they stay with them. Whatever door they walk in. So if that student walks into a workforce development door, they get the same type of student support and counseling that you get in an associate's degree and it's all connected, right? Even our operating systems, the technology is all one technology system. The software attracts the same students. We treat them like the students. And then when they have a graduation ceremony, I give out the the stuff.
Diplomas. Sure.
And so we really are consciously connecting the path. And when a student walks in a workforce training door, we can show that student, okay, you can get this, but this path can lead to this, and they can see it when they walk in. And some of them, when they see it, they won't be it.
Sure.
And that is, I'd say, I'm telling you what it's going to be.
I understand.
Yeah, okay.
But that's the reality that you've got to. Yeah, and I see you're trying to get people to see beyond the
It's
horizon.
happening as we speak. And so when these 20-year-old servers go away, and the technology is doing what it's supposed to be doing, it will accelerate the process. And just the fact that the mayor, this investment that she's making pulls up, that will accelerate the process. And every year we're going to adjust the plan based on what resources we have to work with. I'm excited. I'm involved.
Yeah.
Sounds exciting. Very exciting.
Do we have anybody in the audience? Any of our audience have any questions?
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question about transportation.
Yes.
Since most of your students are not having on campus,
He did.
what about
He's got
those going
some
to
excellent slides on that. So what we need to do is ask a slide.
Yes.
That,
So
what
we
we,
have,
he was just talking
we
about.
have facilities
Is that very
in Ward 8.
graduation rate.
We have
70%.
facilities
There's some
in
things
Ward
behind that,
4.
so because what they
This is
do,
where we're at.
because they just
We
explained
have
that
a
the community
main house for the community
and
college
the
in 801 North Capitol.
bachelor
We have the Backus
college,
facility, which is before the top.
those graduation rates.
And that's going to be the main community college facility. We have P.R. Harris
They
in Ward
don't
8,
use the students
and we
coming
have
out.
Chad
That's
in
the
Ward
students who come
5,
in. These students who go
7,
somewhere else,
Chad
they
in
come
Ward
back.
7.
They're not in that
So we're all over the place.
They're not in that year.
Especially
So
for
they're
workforce
first-time
development.
students.
But the better question is, it's not a better question, but a related question.
Which their graduation rate is 5%.
Transportation
Their
costs is a big
graduation rate is 7%.
So we're working with
Lamar is
Lamar
35%. Okay.
to see if we can get
And you have
the
that
same kind of deal the public schools have. The challenge for us is the part-time students, because they don't want part-time students to get these passes and use them and other stuff, right? But the other thing you may not have noticed is that we have shuttles now. So we have shuttles that run from here to 801 to Backus,
They're trying to
not the P.R. Harris.
this pipeline to
But
college.
we have a loop now where students get on the shuttle for free and get back and forth. Little things. Yes, sir.
Is there, do you notice, or can you speak to what you notice in your incoming freshmen from DC Public School around their preparedness? Have you seen any issues?
Well, so let me put it to you
Issues with
this way.
that?
Our first DC Up student was from Baloo. She was the salutatorian, and she's an absolute star, right? But candidly, most of the students from Baloo are going to come in through the open enrollment door. Because we have cutoff scores up here, not major cutoff scores, but cutoff scores, which is why we're developing the community college as a catch-up expert. We know we got to ratchet them up. And if you work at HBCUs, what's happening in these public schools is nothing, it's nothing new. You can blame it on the teachers, and you can blame it on the kids, but the truth is, we could have a whole other conversation about public schools and a system of white privilege, right? For black kids.
Sure.
You think through the contradiction in terms of but we know they're going to come to us needing help and work. And so HBCUs have learned to take those kids and work with them.
Yeah.
That's what we always had to do. So they don't come to us college ready, but by the time they get up here, they're going to be college ready. to answer your question.
Is
Take
there-
them as we find them.
Is there anything around vertical alignment that can happen?
Say again?
Is there anything that, or is anyone thinking about the possibility of a vertical alignment that UDC somewhat
Yes.
helps DC public
As a
schools
parent,
understand what they
public school
need to
through the
do?
whole
rather
thing.
than-
Yeah,
take
well,
it. I take it.
even more, before the recent shakeup, we were joining the strategic planning. We had a work team that was tied their strategic plan to our strategic plan. Because, the track of things we do at the university level to ratchet them up, the earlier we can start those same tracking systems in the learning process, the more we can do to get it ready before they get here.
I'll have that offline. I am a parent who has had my children in DC public schools the whole time, through their whole career, except for 1 year. And I don't feel that the public schools don't prepare our children. I feel that
Which schools?
Exactly what I said. I was like,
Yeah, right.
I was like, name
Don't
the
tell
school.
us that.
Shepherd
Oh, yeah.
Elementary.
Oh, absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hardy, when Mr.
Yeah.
Pope was there. I don't know if you were here at that point.
Yeah.
Then Deal for the other one, and Banneker. Now we did have
She just named
wait,
off
wait,
four
wait,
of them.
wait, all the good schools. But we did have one errant year where we paid to go to a private school, a very high, supposedly high performing private school. When he came back to Banneker, they were like, he didn't learn nothing over there. So he had not learned anything over there at the very high, expensive, high performing private school that he was in. And so I just think that to paint the blanket picture of when we as HBCUs, and I'm a product of 3 HBCUs, get public school students, and I'm a product of all public schools too, we have to do more across the board. I don't know if maybe that's what you see, but I'm wondering if that's a fair representation.
Well, look,
I think broad-based. I mean,
So-
like I said, you mentioned
Yeah, Banneker
every
is-
school you
Good
mentioned
ones.
was one of the best.
Banneker
It was
is-
not the best schools
Banneker is
in the
Excellent
city.
school.
Hard to get into.
And hard to get into.
I'm a product of a whole bunch of public schools. And with the 3 HBCUs, they didn't have to work hard with me.
okay, but
I guess I know what you're
feeling
saying.
you on that,
I
right?
know what
But
you're saying.
The truth is, the truth is, let me see if I can unpersonalize this.
Yeah.
When I was in Jackson, right? 70% of the teachers in the Jackson public school system graduated from Jackson State University, right? And you know Jackson and the public school system, right? They just couldn't get it right. Okay, and these are mostly black kids taught by black teachers, right? And so I made my teachers at the School of Education responsible for the performance of the kids in the public school system. You see what I'm saying?
I
Because
do.
whatever was going on there, we were responsible for.
That's correct.
And there were one or two good schools, but as a system, the kids came with too many challenges,
Okay.
right? And they do come with challenges.
Okay.
And your kids didn't come with the same challenges.
They came
My
with
children
challenges.
went
Got
to public
challenges.
school.
They got challenged.
Well,
I guess.
they're not coming from Anacostia.
Okay.
They're not going to Baloo. You know?
Okay.
They go to Baloo,
Very
and
different.
Those kids got issues. You know?
True.
Life issues.
They do. I guess I just don't want to paint a blanket picture of all public schools. But that's
connotation.
That's the connotation that when we get them from the public school system,
Catch up.
they got to catch up.
Okay, so the numbers don't lie.
Okay.
DC is the fastest improving school district in the country.
True.
But the gap between the white kids and black kids is getting bigger.
Always.
And so I'm not being
Yeah.
disparaging.
Okay.
I'm just as an educator, and I was trying to make a positive point.
You done a pretty good job.
As the chair of the Commission on African American Affairs, I'm always very conscious of how we paint our African American students and children and population.
But I'm not blaming the students.
Okay.
See, I'm not blaming them.
It's a system.
What I'm saying is, we know who they are, we know what they need, and we are designing a learning system that gives them what they need.
Okay.
Right? Okay, so I'm not, the numbers are what they are. Right? And look, and when you get to other things like being able to write and think critically, and it ain't just
No, it's everybody.
right?
And it ain't just DC.
And it's not just
Absolutely. I mean, that's true. They, you know, I agree with all
So
of
I
that.
can, is this being recorded?
Oh.
Yeah.
I forgot that too. We want you to
Like,
cut
I'm
this,
at the end.
cut this section.
Yeah.
I know the company line.
We can talk about it offline.
No, I mean,
I know the company line, but I also know the students, and then we
Yeah.
deal with it, you know, so. The ones that come to us. Because here's the other thing, the ones that come to us are not the ones that get tagged. Because you can't use tag.
That's right.
Right, right.
And so we get the ones that can't, or even with tag, can't afford to go away to school.
Right. Right.
So we get that population.
Okay.
Just to clarify for the record. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Tamara Henry. I teach at George Washington University in the School of Public Health. And to your point, I take your point seriously because I'm a graduate of Howard University and most people know that. I love my school. However, I have to say that working at GW, that is the connotation. That's exactly what you just said. You hear it in faculty meetings when you come from a DCPS. If it's not across the street at School Without Walls,
That's right.
we're kind of like, oh Lord,
Here
what are we going to do with these
come-
kids? So it is that sort of connotation, unfortunately. But I had a lovely student who had gone to Ballou High School, the first in his family to go to college, so he was at GW for free, and he was also valedictorian 4 years ago. He came into the institution as an engineering major, and one makes a lot of assumptions about a child that has decided that he or she wants to become an engineer. Like they took calculus, physics maybe. He didn't take any of that. So he gets to school, and he's failing miserably at GW, and he goes to the professor after the first exam and he says, you know, I'm just not, I didn't take this, I don't understand it, can you help me? Now this is after exam 1, to which the professor doesn't even turn to look at this child to speak to him. Instead, he's typing, he looks over his shoulder and he says, well, you know what? That is just too bad. We don't have time to teach you things like that here. You should know it already. And dismissed him. So this child goes on to study criminal justice. He's graduating in a couple of weeks. And I was like, criminal justice, what are you talking about? That's not what you came here to do. But I say it to say that he was not prepared at Ballou. The class was going so fast for him that his desire didn't mean anything. He couldn't find any faculty, any tutor. He could not afford a tutor to catch him up to the level of calculus and physics that he needed to be an engineering major. So I suggested, well, did you call anybody at Howard? Because we will take care of you at Howard. That's what we do. We take students like you, and we make sure that you graduate. My daddy went to Howard. He's an engineer. You too can be an engineer. He said when he called, he had gone up there and spoken with folks, they would let him in immediately. He could not afford it. He could not pay $1 for Howard. And that was the bottom line for him, which is why he changed his major to criminal justice, so he could get out of GW with no tuition, but he still wanted to be an engineer.
Which takes me back to my conversation about marketing this school to our students so they see what resources here.
We're going to market it because if he had called here,
Right,
he could have gone to the fastest growing
right.
engineering school in the district, where every student has an internship before they graduate, and he could get an entire engineering degree for 1 year's tuition at Howard.
I would have told him if I knew.
UDC should be
But I
the
didn't know.
go-to school for the district,
Yep.
not
Yeah,
Howard.
period.
It will be. So I got some of Howard to be careful because we're going to
Don't
be
tell
able
Howard
to
to
see
be
the choice before it's all said and done.
Support my
Do you
school,
still
put
have the
that back.
connection,
school
the
teachers.
aerospace piece with, I think there was I used to see a outpost at the airport. Yeah, at the airport.
That was that's a airplane mechanics training.
Oh, it is?
That's
Okay.
Still there.
Oh, okay.
Still there. And it's growing. We're doing a lot.
I have a question for
Yes.
you.
I'm sorry.
That's quite all right. Some of the statistics you showed were frightening. I have young children and college-age children, and I saw the budget gaps in terms of percentage of budget for the jurisdiction versus DC, and appreciate that you want to move from 1.1% to 1.7%. all that, okay. Why didn't you go for 3%? And why isn't there more of a clamor amongst our leadership to make that happen, especially when I see baseball stadiums, soccer stadiums, land grabs and grants and giveaways all over town?
Yeah, exactly.
It seems unconscionable that UDC isn't funded more closely and in alignment with what is the national average.
Yes, so you know DC and UDC better than I do probably, right? And but my impression, my observation is that, you know, people have a ambiguity when it comes to UDC, right? On the one hand, they want a good university, but on the other hand, they've been so burned by the history of the place that they don't want to be associated with it, right? It's my impression. I don't know. And a lot of that, the leadership here as well. You know, if I'm a mayor and I'm running unopposed and I don't need to change my narrative, do I really want to claim UDC as part of my narrative, right? And to her credit, she did, and that was a big jump, a big deal. You know, it took me 3 years to get her there. So you know, we wanted to give real numbers, and we know we can do what we ask for, right? And if we can get what we ask for and do what we do, I think the rest will take care of itself.
My follow-up. Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah.
My follow-up question is, what do you think the likelihood of getting that 1.7% really
Well,
is?
I think it's going to happen. Yeah, I think it's going to happen. Well, I mean, you never know from year to year, right? And every year is a new revenue stream and new budget situations and who knows what. All I know is that the mayor, in her own words, put an extra $10 million, and she called it a down payment. A down payment on the equity imperative. And going from nothing to that, to me, I'll take it.
Absolutely.
I'll take it.
Tony, do you have a question?
Yeah, you know, first of all, thank you very much. And every time I hear you, what really strikes me as just your work is first and foremost your transparency. You are completely transparent about the history of the challenges of the university. And I think that makes the case, you know, so reflective of that strong leadership. So, you know, I want to see you can be doing some great things here. You started in 2016, I think.
I started, I'll be 3 years at the end of June.
In June, right? So looking at your bio. So there's several things that kind of come to mind for me. So as I was listening to Dr. Henry, I was a young man in 1978, coming out of BCPS, honorable student, going to American University, struggling right there. You know, and at the university, realized that what I got from H.B. Woodson, which was probably one of the top schools at that time, I looked at H.B. Woodson right at the time that they built it, and it was a college preparatory high school, power of power. You had everything else kind of cutting edge, you know, speed reading, the whole 9 yards, and they had it there. But nonetheless, being here at American University, I realized in that environment, it was just real tough to keep up. I had to work twice as hard to do so. And I did not get the academic support here. Unlike many of my colleagues, peers at that time, who were fortunate to have what was called the Frederick Douglass Scholarship, which was a full ride. You had to get it in the first year and walk you all the way through. So that means you were calm, nurtured, you were counseled around the course you take, so that you would have the right GPA upon graduation to really move forward once you learn academia. So I didn't have that protection. So as a result, I had to go through the rough road, right? Had average GPA when I probably should have had an above average GPA, right? So I had to do kind of some extra things, you know, kind of beat that up. So, however, though, I can remember making that choice, right? Upon graduation, where I was going to go. And the way my mind was working, and I suspect a lot of young people who are considering college want to get a degree that's competitive. So as much as I love my hometown university, I didn't see it as competitive.
I understand.
Right. You got to get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now, what's very interesting is I have a very good friend of mine today who's talking about, I've been on graduate school 30 years. So he is an engineer PhD. He came to UBC, and then he landed at Howard to finish there, right? So he's doing like some really great things out there. We communicate a lot, and just a pathway of how we all kind of came up with the process. So with that being said, what do you see as kind of in your short-term plan as some major accomplishments? And with that, what are some of the threats you perceive? I think it would be good for us to understand some of the real potential threats that could hamper your process, right? It doesn't sound like you're going to take that into consideration. It sounds like you're going to break through on the other side of all these things, right? But what do you see as some of those threats in the midst of some of the things you're trying to accomplish?
Threats. This is going to sound threats.
It's like a swallow now.
No, I'm thinking swat in my head. You know, I mean, I don't want to overemphasize this, but I think with the proper resources, you know, we can manage a lot of where we want to go. You know, I think we can increase the value of the degree over time. But what I also think is going to happen, and this is the real challenge in the context of the conversation we just had, right? There's no doubt that the district is gentrified, right? And if you're, and I told this to these merch parents over here, that we have merch temporarily on our campus. You know, TAG is probably not going to keep up with inflation.
Coveted
right?
white public school.
And when you have a kid in the first, second, third grade, by the time they're ready to go to college, that tuition is going to be $100,000. And they're going to be, and we will, by then, we will have turned this into a really nice university, I think, right? And they're going to be looking for a cost-effective, local option, right?
Party.
And so one of the threats is the gentrification of UDC.
That's right.
Right, which is why I'm focusing so much energy on that open door that we have right now. Is the first piece, right? But also, you know, in any gentrified community, there's always going to be pockets, right? And you just kind of see those pockets develop now. But I think we need to make sure that over time, those pockets become gentrified without changing color.
Right.
Over time. That's the equity imperative, right? And so, you know, in the short run, we need to make sure that we take these young people where they are and ratchet them up as much as we can. But in the long run, we need to make sure that the Key 16 learning system, just as a matter of course, is designed to make them as competitive as anybody else by the time they get to college. And I think that's our that's my personal, as a president for this institution, dual goals. Because we're going to fix it up, as long as we got the money, right? We're going to be operationally ready, as long as we got the resources. We're going to have top-notch faculty, we'll have top-notch facilities, as long as we got the resources. The real issue is making sure that those resources are there for the people that were originally designed to serve.
Exactly.
That's the real challenge.
That's a threat.
That is the challenge
Yeah.
for many HBCUs,
Yes.
that once they see that there's an opportunity to go and get a good education for a lot less cost, and you know, they also get minority scholarships and minority money, because on HBCUs they are the minority, then that's when they start to be able to take over. It happened with Bevel State. It happens with a lot of our institutions. In terms of, look at Hardy. When Hardy was renovating over in Northeast, nobody cared about Hardy. Am I correct, Director? It was black. When they finished the renovations in Georgetown, and they saw all these black and Hispanic children coming into their neighborhoods, that's when they said, we're taking this school back. It's not going to be an application school anymore. It's not going to be selective anymore. They ruled the principal out. They changed the requirements, and it's a neighborhood school.
Michelle Lee,
She certainly did. She absolutely did.
Resilient, sustainable, and equitable community, right? And they're getting the resilience down pretty good. They're getting the sustainability down pretty good. The challenge is the equity part.
Right.
And I really do think the mayor understands it. It's a tough challenge. But we chose the title of this thing by design. You know, it's the equity imperative because we think our job is to make sure that that equity piece of it actually ends up being accomplished. And only UDC can do it. That's why we're so important, I think. With a little help from our friends, we'll get it done.
That was going to be my last question. As we close, what kinds of things can our commissions do to help support?
Sure. So before the mayor made a recommendation, we actually had her how to contact her and all of her people to put the heat on. But we've gotten that part done. So the next part is the council people. You all of y'all know council folks from the districts and so forth. Tell them what you saw. Tell them, you know, UDC is worthy of investment. And I think we are. I think we've proved ourselves to be good stewards of public resources. You know, the federal government can trust us, I'm sure. And then, you know, think about how you can be a champion, you know. I think that was a good point.
Yeah.
You know, a champion is not necessarily somebody riding around on a horse with a shield, you know. I mean, it's a conversation here. You know, it's just being willing to claim the place when everybody else is wondering whether they want to be associated with it, you know. Even if you're not comfortable yet that it's competitive enough for your own child, you know. Think about your grandchildren, you know, and what you need to have here for them when they come, or your third child. I mean, there's all kinds of little ways you can start to claim a place.
It's a 50-50 chance.
And I think really what we need at UDC is to be claimed.
No, what I'm looking at right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to thank you, Doctor.
Hey, I like
Fantastic presentation. We've learned a lot, and we do want to be your champion,
Thank you very much.
UDC's champion.
And if you ever need me to do this anywhere, at any other forums, anything like that, it's a living document. It gets better every time we use it.
Sure. Fantastic.
I don't know the man's name back here. I want to turn this off.
The one with the headphones in? Yeah. He got the headphones in. He don't know what we're talking
Turn
about.
this off? Just turn the computer off. Okay. Go ahead.
How are young people?
I love it.
Do we want? I'm sorry. You have a point to make? You have a point to make? Yeah, we're going to join, but is there any other issues that commissioners want to bring up before we leave? Announcements.
I don't have an issue or an announcement. I just like to say I'm very impressed by the president of UDC.
Absolutely.
And I think he's doing
Absolutely.
fantastic.
We need more like that. Absolutely. We'll adjourn and then we'll take a picture.
We want to come say hi, y'all.
No, well, we're gonna. We can actually do it up there if you want.
Whatever you want
Next
to
to the
do.
Okay,
podium.
yeah. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Do you have a question before you?
Was there a question?
Comment.
I want to invite the commission. I'm with Dr. Cornell West tomorrow at Shallow Baptist Church, the Black National Convention. And I'll be presenting on 2018 Look at the Black Father. And so I want to say something to you about Heavenly Father. Of course, we can talk later. But we'll be presenting one. I'd like for the commission to come and be a part of it. It's at 6 o'clock, Shallow Baptist Church.
I'm just talking about how on
Okay.
Sunday.
Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. We can do it up front.
Good to see you. So I just come in from the DC jail, so I'll be back home.
I can imagine. I can imagine.
Thank you again.
Thank you so much. It was great. We'll be glad to have you at one of our commission meetings also.
absolutely.
At our Ward 4 forum.
Okay.
At our next forum.
All right. Just let me-
We will definitely let you know.
All right. All right. All right.